ये गरीब लोग हमारे खिलाफ बगावत क्यों नहीं कर देते हैं। इन्हें गुस्सा नहीं आता है जब ये सोशल मीडिया पर देखते हैं हमें आलीशान बिल्डिंगों में रहते हुए, विदेशों में छुट्टियां मनाते हुए, महंगी कारों में घूमते हुए और एक किस्म की बौद्धिकता का लबादा ओढ़कर अपनी संपन्नता का प्रदर्शन करते हुए। क्यों नहीं एक रोज़ ये कतारबद्ध होकर निकलते हैं अपने अपने घेटों से, अपनी अपनी झोपड़ियों से और ऐलाने जंग कर देते हैं। आखिर क्या है जो इन्हें रोकता है? यही है इस नई किताब की विषय वस्तु। क्या हिंदी बोलने वालों को ये लगता है कि हिंदी इंडियन लैंग्वेज है? कई नेताओं को भी लगता है। हाउ डू यू लुक एट दिस लैंग्वेज?
आपको कैसे पता चलता है कि गूगल मेल है या फीमेल? अगर अमित शाह जी को हिंदी साउथ इंडिया में लेना है कि वो ऑफिशियली जेंडर को बैन कर, भाषा में आई मीन हिंदी में बैन कर दो, ओके, क्या ही चलेगा?
हाउ डू यू लुक एट दिस struggle which is not just a class struggle?
Many such behavior of people which I used to see only with poor people.
India's very definition of comfort is a state that is inaccessible to the poor.
We don't, in a poor country, you don't have to be a jerk to be vulgar. Like sometimes I'm driving my car and 20 people in front of me are traveling in one tractor. They're all looking at me.
गरीब पैदा हुए तुम्हारी गलती नहीं, गरीब मरे तो तुम्हारी गलती है।
Yeah.
इंडियंस को इंक्लूडिंग अस, हमें हमेशा बताया गया कि गांव से निकलना है, छोटे कस्बे से बाहर निकलना है तो पढ़ाई। पर उस पढ़ाई के अपने बहुत मसले हैं क्योंकि वो एक नए किस्म का सोशल ऑर्डर बिल्ड करता है। आपने बहुत डिटेल्स में बात की है।
हायर एजुकेशन इज ओनली अ क्लब. हायर एजुकेशन इन इंडिया ओनली मीन्स दैट योर पेरेंट्स पेड द फीस.
कन्हैया कुमार और नरेंद्र मोदी का बड़ा अच्छा एग्जांपल भी दिया है.
Correct. You know, the fact that there is Narendra Modi and Kanhaiya Kumar only shows that there were thousands of people like them. If they don't make it in politics, they are nothing.
क्या ये कनेक्शन है स्टेटस को का और पॉलिटिशियंस का?
जो भी अमीर लोग सोचते थे वो गरीब नहीं सोचते ऐसे. इनफैक्ट वो साइन था कि ओके, ये अपर क्लास लोग का ये एटीट्यूड है तो गरीब लोग on purpose they will do the opposite thing. They talk about billionaires. They talk about how much money the billionaires have.
I want to talk about Radia tapes.
Oh, okay. I mean, what she was trying to do clearly, she was trying to get someone appointed as telecom minister. Just because political corruption, Indians are bored. I mean, you can tell them the most interesting thing they want, but people have not seen how media is used.
ये गरीब लोग हमारे खिलाफ बगावत क्यों नहीं कर देते हैं। इन्हें गुस्सा नहीं आता है जब ये सोशल मीडिया पर देखते हैं हमें आलीशान बिल्डिंगों में रहते हुए, विदेशों में छुट्टियां मनाते हुए, महंगी कारों में घूमते हुए और एक किस्म की बौद्धिकता का लबादा ओढ़कर अपनी संपन्नता का प्रदर्शन करते हुए। क्यों नहीं एक रोज़ ये कतारबद्ध होकर निकलते हैं अपने अपने घेटों से, अपनी अपनी झोपड़ियों से और ऐलाने जंग कर देते हैं। आखिर क्या है जो इन्हें रोकता है? यही है इस नई किताब की विषय वस्तु। ये किताब जिसे मनु जोसेफ ने लिखा है, अलिफ ने छापा है, 599 रुपये कीमत है। वाई द पुअर डोंट किल अस, द साइकोलॉजी ऑफ इंडियंस। भारतीयों की मनोदशा पर पिछले कई बरसों से, मैं कई बरसों पे इसलिए ठिठक रहा हूँ क्योंकि मेरे भी अध्ययन की सीमा है, लिखी गई ये सबसे ज़्यादा तंज से भरी, हास्य व्यंग्य से भरी, अंतर्दृष्टि से भरी हुई किताब है। और इससे पहले कि मैं इसके ऑथर से बात करना शुरू करूँ, देवियों और सज्जनों, आई स्ट्रांगली रेकमेंड यू टू बाय दिस बुक। ज़रूर पढ़िए और पेंसिल लेकर पढ़िए। खुद मैं आपको अपनी कॉपी दिखाऊं तो इसके तकरीबन हर पन्ने को, हर दूसरे पन्ने को मैंने मोड़ रखा है और जगह जगह ज़रूरी पंक्तियां मार्क कर रखी हैं। और क्यों कर रखी हैं ये इसका थोड़ा सा अंदाज़ा आपको इस बातचीत के दौरान लगेगा। भारतीयों की मनोदशा, ख़ास तौर पर गरीबों की मनोदशा, और उस मनोदशा को कैसे निर्धारित किया जाता है। क्यों उन्हें लगता है कि पढ़ाई एक रास्ता है एस्केप वेलोसिटी, क्यों उन्हें अति अमीरों के अश्लील प्रदर्शन एस्पिरेशनल लगते हैं कभी कभी। कब कौन सा नेता आकर उनकी तमाम पीड़ाओं को एक आवाज़ दे देता है, क्यों गरीब आपस में एक दूसरे से ज़्यादा झगड़ते हैं, क्यों वो अपने ही यूनिवर्सल सेट में काम करते हैं, इस तरह की तमाम वजहें बताई गई। और वो जो गरीब नहीं है उनके बारे में भी खुलकर बात की गई है कि क्यों वो विदेशों में छुट्टियां मनाकर वापस भारत लौटना चाहते हैं, किस तरह का केओस, किस तरह का सोशल ऑर्डर है, किस तरह की हिपोक्रेसी है जो उन्हें मोहित करती है। लेखक ने किसी को नहीं बख्शा है, न नेताओं को, न इस देश के कथित महान इंस्टीट्यूशंस को, न ज्ञान की परंपराओं को, और न दकियानूसी तौर तरीकों को। मनु जोसेफ, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है किताबवाला में। एंड सर, क्या कमाल की किताब लिखी है।
थैंक यू सो मच, थैंक यू फॉर होस्टिंग मी।
कैन यू स्पीक हिंदी?
हाँ, मैं कोशिश कर सकता हूँ, इफ यू प्रॉमिस नॉट टू लाफ।
I won't, sir. You have written such a wonderful book. No, I'm asking this question because, as you have mentioned in the book as well, that you're primarily a Malayalam speaking fellow who can also speak Tamil.
Yeah, my mother tongue is Malayalam. I'm most fluent in Tamil. In fact, my most fluent language was Tamil till the age of 16. I started speaking English to impress the girls. And then, of course, at that point, English was where all the hope was. That all legitimate, high-paying professions required English at that point. But my mother loved Hindi. So she made me learn Hindi in school, and I also did the Pratmik, Madhyama, Rashtra Bhasha. I don't know if you guys are aware of it in Hindi Prachar Sabha.
जी.
You go on the side and you learn Hindi. So I can read and write very well. मगर जब मैं बात करता हूँ लोग हंसने शुरू करते हैं।
क्यों, ऐसा क्यों है?
वो
आपको
chief
लगता है कि
problem है-
उत्तर भारत एक किस्म की फेक कल्चरल हेजुमनी, एक सेंस ऑफ सुपीरियरिटी, क्या हिंदी बोलने वालों को ये लगता है कि हिंदी इंडियन लैंग्वेज है? कई नेताओं को भी लगता है। हाउ डू यू लुक एट दिस लैंग्वेज?
नहीं, वो तो सब इंडियन लैंग्वेज में एक्चुअली इंफीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स होता है ज़्यादा, यू नो, द प्राइमरी फीलिंग। बट मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, अभी लैंग्वेज ऑल्सो फ्रेम्स अ नॉलेज सिस्टम। तो जब मैं हिंदी बोलता हूँ, आपको नहीं लगेगा कि मैं एक किताब लिखा हूँ, यू नो, बिकॉज आई वुड साउंड बिट स्टूपिड, बट मुझे अच्छा लगता है आपसे हिंदी में बात करने का। मगर 2 प्रॉब्लम्स है, और आपके शो में आप ये भी प्रमोट किया तो अच्छा रहेगा। One which makes Hindi difficult for people who don't speak in Hindi is वो inanimate objects में gender होता है, मेल फीमेल है। किताब masculine पुल्लिंग होता है और पुस्तक स्त्रीलिंग होता है, करेक्ट? और मुझे आपको कैसा पता चलता है कि गूगल मेल है या फीमेल है, आईफोन मेल है या फीमेल है, क्या हो रहा है, यू नो? तो अगर अमित शाह जी को हिंदी साउथ इंडिया में लेना है तो उनको आप मेरा एक एडवाइस है कि वो ऑफिशियली जेंडर को बैन करना, भाषा में आई मीन हिंदी में बैन कर दो, ओके? क्या ही चलेगा, बिकॉज अभी मॉडर्न टाइम्स में ह्यूमंस, आई मीन इवन ह्यूमंस डोंट हैव जेंडर एनीमोर, दे क्लेम.
Few of them
In
claim.
fact, Trump had to pass an executive order saying that there are only 2 genders. So when the whole everything is fluid, why do you want to have gender for computer, flask, car? You know, who's deciding all this? From when, you know? तो वो एक बात है। और सेकंड प्रॉब्लम, वो एक्चुअली मेरा पर्सनल प्रॉब्लम है, वो ख ख ग घ, उसमें बहुत मुझे 100 कैलोरीज लगता है करेक्ट शब्द, करेक्ट तरीके से बोलने का। और इवन व्हेन आई वाज अ किड, मुझे एक बात समझ में नहीं आया था, ख ख ग ग न्या और ठ ठ ड ड, वो उसके बाद न्या, वो क्या साउंड्स है, यू नो, किस वर्ड्स में यूज करते हैं, वो साउंड्स किधर आता है मुझे पता नहीं है, यू नो। सो हिंदी एक्चुअली जो नेटिव स्पीकर्स नहीं है हिंदी में, उनके लिए थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट है, एंड यू डोंट रियलाइज कितना डिफिकल्ट है एक्चुअली। व्हेन आई वाज 25 or something, that's when the Gujarat riots happened, and I had to meet Praveen Togadia many times. Praveen Togadia,
विश्व हिंदू परिषद में
he was a big figure. But he always met me. He was always cordial with me. But once क्या हो गया था उनके गार्डन में इंटरव्यू कर रहा था. He asked me to do the
अहमदाबाद
interview in
में?
the Ahmedabad में. And all his neighbors started, they came and they started listening. तो उनका कुछ performative, maybe he wanted to perform, so he started making fun of my Hindi. मैं उनसे हिंदी में बात करता था. Questions सब बहुत struggle करके कुछ बोलता था उनको. तो उन्होंने he started making fun of my Hindi, saying that क्या है, Indians को अभी हिंदी भी बात करना नहीं आता. So then my next 3 questions to him was in Tamil, which he didn't understand. So he understood the fact that there
Point
can
you are
only,
setting.
there is only North Indian nationalists. There is no Indian nationalists. Okay. फिर भी हम सब कोशिश करते हैं हिंदी में बात करने, but we all can understand it absolutely well. In fact, Malayalis can understand Hindi, even good Hindi well, that Modi wala, Sankalp wala Hindi, which is called the film song Hindi. Because Malayalam is highly Sanskritized. So there are a lot of overlaps. Yeah, so there we are.
कैसे आया ये किताब? ये पहली आपकी नॉन फिक्शन है,
Yes.
है ना? आपने 3 बहुत चर्चित नॉवेल्स लिखे हैं, एक वो मिस लैला वाला, एक इलिसिट हैप्पीनेस वाला, और तीसरा मैंने नहीं पलटा है. मैं देख लेता हूँ नाम था कि दर्शकों को भी बता सकूँ. सीरियस मैन, द इलिसिट हैप्पीनेस ऑफ अदर पीपल, एंड मिस लैला आर्म्ड एंड डेंजरस. तो फिर ये नॉन फिक्शन लिखने का ख्याल कैसे आया, और वो भी इतना जटिल टॉपिक, भारतीयों की साइकोलॉजी, मनोदशा?
Yeah. Because I'm a journalist, I've always been a journalist. So this subject was of interest to all Indians. So obviously as a journalist, अक्सर सोचता था, in fact, as an Indian middle class person, उनका Indian middle class person होने का qualification है कि ऑटो ड्राइवर से हर महीना एक झगड़ा करो, टैक्सी ड्राइवर से झगड़ा करो. मैं दिल्ली में भी झगड़ा करता हूँ, हिंदी में करता हूँ. कभी कभी वो baffled दिखता है तो मुझे मेरा pronunciation से. But anyway, when I'm dealing with real India, I'm always wondering actually, at the back of my head, it's like, why are they tolerating it? Because most of the time negotiations be itne, even when you're fighting with the auto guy or a taxi driver, I feel very hypocritical. Because when I go to Tokyo, I know what the taxi fare is. It is 10 times more than India. Anyone who travels outside India, you quietly pay the official thing, which is 10 times more. It's only after I started traveling outside India that I understood India's corruption as a compensation for very low rates of payment, for various services, that people give it, like 5,000 के लिए एक महीने के लिए एक मेड मिल जाते हैं, 1 घंटे 2 घंटे काम करने के लिए, 20-30 हज़ार के लिए एक ड्राइवर रख सकते हैं लोग. These are all very low payments that by international standards. Now we are a middle income country. We are not a cheap country anymore. But anyway, I used to think, why is everybody taking it? हम लोगों को इतने tolerate क्यों करते हैं? So I've been building on this for some time. And then अभी 8 साल पहले नोएडा में एक इंसिडेंट हुआ था. जो स्लम में रहते हैं, they attacked a residential upper middle class building.
तो हाउस हेल्प थे और उस सब लोगों ने प्रोटेस्ट किया था. हाँ, मारपीट
तो
भी हुआ.
हाउस, there was a suspicion that one of the residents had detained a servant maid, thinking that she stole something. So the whole slum came and attacked the sahib and the mem sahib. And a week after that, one man who was shouting at the guards because they had damaged the Wi-Fi or something like that, suddenly they started beating him up.
The guard.
Okay, and those things used to happen only in Noida. Now it started happening in Gurgaon. By the way, the last week, एक Mercedes car को, I don't know if you've seen the videos of the guard. One guard is breaking the windshields of the Mercedes, because usually they would think twice. I thought they would break only of a Santro or small car. But now the confidence बढ़ गया है. So at that point, 8 years ago when this happened, I thought now I'm sensing I already sense a change in behavior. मेरा colony में, I see that the maids are talking back to the main sub. If they're not talking properly, stop the cycle and shout back at the main sub. The guards salute is not very strong. They also not rising all the time. They just pretending. Compared to my father's time, when the guards really felt inferior, but now everybody has a sense of dignity. मैं भी बोलता हूँ गार्ड को, मगर थोड़ा कंफ्यूज हो जाता है between my message and the Hindi, that you don't have to get up. मुझे बुरा लगता है कि you rise and salute and all that. What is the meaning of salute? So anyway, I was seeing that the behavior बहुत change हो रहा है. And I thought more such conflicts are going to happen, but they didn't happen. वो बहुत rare isolated incidents था. So I started wondering, and I had a vague idea of why this is so. And I thought I will start working on this book. I wrote a column with some of the main. I used to write I still write a column for the Mint newspaper, and the column was called "Why the Poor Don't Kill Us." And after that, I've been thinking of this idea on and off, and that's how the book happened.
पहली किताब में आपने कुछ बड़ी दिलचस्प चीज़ें रखी. एक तो पूरा गुजरात के अर्थक्वेक और उस दौरान लोगों की मृतकों के प्रति, जीवितों के प्रति. फिर आप लिखते हैं कि I have seen this felt pragmatism before they were behaving like poor people. They are ancient people living in our modern times. And we live in times where everyone has some claim to poverty, including intellectuals who had started out as affluent, who have now been priced out of their old privileges by the new rich. They can't afford the Taj resorts anymore, they have to go to boutique hotels. और फिर आगे आप लिखते हैं कि I use the word poor to mean anyone who does not feel economically comfortable in a particular situation. एंड फिर आप बताते भी हैं कि एंशियंट टाइम से कैसे अलग, क्योंकि उन लोगों को पता था कि उनके कंट्रोल में चीज़ें नहीं हैं.
करेक्ट.
हम इस भरम में जीते हैं. हाउ डू यू, क्योंकि एज यू सेड कि सब कोई भी पुअर हो सकता है, सब अपने अपने दिमाग में. हाउ डू यू लुक एट दिस struggle, which is not just a class struggle? There are multiple identities and they struggle with each other.
Yeah. See, one thing which interests me, and it's very lucky for a writer to live in India, because I am interested in behavior. We have whole wide range of behavior in India, and there are so many of us कि any human behavior can be observed in India. And if there's something that you don't observe in India, it means no other human would probably have it, because हमारे पास सब है.
Spectrum बड़ा है हमारा.
Full spectrum है. But one thing confused me. So as a writer, I'm always embarrassed when I get angry in public because of an Indian situation, or when I get confused. Because ये दोनों चीज makes me feel like an amateur Indian, that you're not good at being Indian. You're not supposed to be so surprised, by these things. But I still remember when I went to cover the Gujarat Gujarat earthquake, the Bhuj earthquake. The first person I met, I was there within 6 or 8 hours after the earthquake. I was with Outlook magazine, and जब हम पहुंचे तो कुछ, there was nothing. I thought nothing हुआ इधर, कुछ नहीं हुआ. But then we realized that all the buildings are not there. They're just rubble. And then there's one man standing outside one rubble. मुझे पहला पता नहीं था, तो वो उनका घर था, घर था या घर थी.
जी, घर था.
So he was standing there, and then he told me that his entire family with kids, his wife and kids, are buried under it. And every now and then, like 30 minutes, he can hear their cry for help. He can hear them, and then they go quiet. Maybe they become unconscious or something. I don't know, I was 25 years old. I don't know how to talk to a man whose family is buried inside. So, but I wanted to go somewhere to some medical grounds where I heard that there are a lot of injured people. And this man is giving me directions. There's one thing about Indians, you ask them for directions, even if they don't know, they will tell you the directions. They would. And he was exhibiting that. He was busy telling me left, right, whatever. And I'd asked the guy next to him. That's another thing which irritates Indians. You didn't ask you for direction, you asked the next guy. He was very aggressively telling me how to go. So, how does a person where the whole family is buried, he's still giving me directions to a place? Of course, there could be psychological explanations to how people behave during a great tragedy. But what occurred to me was all through Gujarat, or all through Bhuj area when I was covering, there were many such behavior of people which I used to see only with poor people, associate only with poor people, because their lives are so uncertain and tragic that things that we think people can't take, they would be, not that they can take it, they just seem to handle it with more strength, as though they are used to it, as though it is no big deal. Like, for example, a driver will say that my daughter is dead, my daughter died last week. And it is not something which a lot of people in a social class can even say easily.
They do not have the luxury of prolonged mourning.
Prolonged mourning, and not only that, I feel that at one level they also are used to tragedies. They're also used to tragedy, which is a dark fact. But during the earthquake, everybody was behaving like that. So when there is a huge tragedy which happens at that scale, everybody was behaving in a way which was at first confusing, but then later I realized that it is also the way poor behave when a great tragedy happens to them. And that's how I look at, I feel that sometimes 300 years ago, 400 years ago, a lot of people would be behaving very differently from us in the face of tragedy. So I feel, that's why I feel that there are some ways in which the poor people behave, which makes me feel that this is how people 300 years, 400 years ago must have behaved, or this is how they must have faced their own tragedies. So that's why I say that one definition I have for extremely poor people is that they are many centuries behind, but they are stuck in this time.
Ancient people in modern times.
Ancient people in modern times. Which is worse. I think when 400 years ago, everybody was poor except the king. Which is a better way to be than to be now in the bottom 20% when even ordinary people have better lives than you. So I feel that the tension would be much higher now. And it is in a way worse. When I was a kid, I noticed one thing about the slum kids, that they were at one level sorted and psychologically fine, compared to that middle class guy who lost his father and who's suddenly poor, but he has to keep pretending that he's still middle class. So when you're poor, you're surrounded by a whole society which is poor, that somehow protects you psychologically and comforts you more than being poor and being surrounded by people who are much better than you.
एक आपका जो तीसरा चैप्टर है उसमें कई दिलचस्प टिप्पणियां हैं, हाउ वी प्रोवोक. उसमें एक जगह आप इंडियन बुफे का, खासतौर पे 5 स्टार बुफे का बड़ा डिटेल एग्जांपल देते हैं, पर उसके भी पहले आप एक चीज़ कहते हैं, इंडियाज़ वेरी डेफिनेशन ऑफ कंफर्ट इज़ अ स्टेट दैट इज़ इनएसेसिबल टू द पुअर. थोड़ा इसको समझाइए. आपने आगे भी कई जगह लिखा है, वी आर अ वल्गर नेशन इन अ शेमफुल वे. Every affluent Indian may or may not have a moral compass, but certainly has one for India, and it directs the country to end poverty. And then, why you are more vulgar than a billionaire? Because the best part about this book, इस किताब की सबसे अच्छी बात यह है कि ये इस देश के तमाम अमीर, अपर क्लास, अपर मिडिल क्लास, मिडिल क्लास, लोअर मिडिल, मतलब आप जिस भी उसमें हैं, ये सीधे आपकी तरफ देखती है, आपके रोज़मर्रा के व्यवहारों से उदाहरण उठाती है और फिर वो हमने अपने दिमाग में एक जो मोरालिटी के कंपास और एक किस्म की एम्पैथी के, श्रेष्ठता के कंपास बना रखे हैं, उनको बिना किसी चेतावनी के हथौड़ा मार के ध्वस्त कर देती है। तो आपको समझ में नहीं आता कि आप थोड़ा सा मुस्कुराएं या थोड़ा सा अपनी सोच के प्रति अपमानित महसूस करें। वंडरफुल राइटिंग,
थैंक यू सो
वेरी
मच।
प्रोवोकिंग। द वोटर हेट सेंस इटसेल्फ, उसका भी आपने एक रीजन दिया, जरा ये समझाइए सर, बड़ा कमाल का है। इंडिया अपीयर्स टू बी अ फेयर प्लेस ऑन सोशल मीडिया। मैं तो ये सारी वो लाइन पढ़ रहा हूँ जो मैंने अलग से मार्क कर रखी हैं जी। This is a nation where the middle class pays a premium not for the quality of things but to ensure the other kind of Indians are not allowed entry. जी, क्या है ये मसला?
So, what's your question?
How we provoke?
Yeah. See, now that we need the working class, everywhere. For example, you gave the example of buffet. जब मैं 5-star buffet में, when I see a 5-star buffet, मुझे बहुत nervous लगता है, because अगर revolution start होगा तो 5-star buffet में ही होगा, This is especially in a resort kind of a situation. अभी वो पहले 20 years ago, the people who used to go to the 5-star buffet, they look like people Karan Johar would cast. Now I say that they look like people who Anurag Kashyap would cast. They're more different kind of, because हमको economic democratization हो गया, So, and in fact, the early class wala, they can't afford Taj anymore. Now, Dubai is cheaper. Dubai 5 stars are cheaper than Goa 5 star in the season. There are a lot of people who used to have these kind of lives. They can't afford, all these English intellectuals, and that is one of the irritations that they are having. That when India was poor, it was very inexpensive to be rich. Now it is very expensive to be rich. You really have to be rich to have a rich lifestyle. Middle class, ठीक है. But in these places, anyway, the problem though is that अभी class or money same चीज नहीं है. Those people who have money, they want to show that they have money, and not only that, they feel that everyone is their servant, and there is a way in which people behave, especially when they are hungry या ज़्यादा sugar खा लिया, मुझे पता नहीं क्या है. They start shouting, and especially when the puri is some 5 minutes late and there is a huge crowd around the buffet, because around 8:30 is when everybody comes to eat, everybody is hungry. And I've always noticed in the holiday resort, you don't notice this in business 5-star buffets, vacation time में resort में बहुत सारा bad behavior होता है. And also when Indians also feel that if you shout a bit, you can get some discount, because if they are not happy with something, you start shouting at the waiters or something, you get some
aggression helps.
Some kuch milta. But I feel that all this aggression is what I'm calling a bit vulgar, because now, for example, the waiters know that everyone's bill is some 4,000 bucks, 5,000 rupees. And there is another thing which is happening. India has prospered so much that Indian companies can't afford to hire those people as staff whom they could afford to get 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now they are coming from deeper India, from smaller towns, where wastage of food, let's say, is some big cultural shock. So your meal is 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees per table, even 20,000. And then half the buffet is going to be thrown out. These are all cultural shocks.
For the people who are serving.
For people who are serving, they are from a different place. So I feel that that's what, so we keep provoking them in many ways. Not only that, sometimes I'm in the car, we don't, in a poor country, you don't have to be a jerk to be vulgar. Like sometimes I'm driving my car and 20 people in front of me are traveling in one tractor. They're all looking at me. Okay, I am the only guy in the car, and there are 20, 30 people traveling. In Gurgaon, buses nahi hai, you know. You will see a Lamborghini once a day if you're out in Gurgaon. But 10 days में एक बार public bus दिखेगा आपको गुड़गांव में. Because public transport nahi hai, you know, there is only that rail which starts from the golf course road. So log kaise jate hai, 20 log, 30 log, they're on a tractor, you know, they travel in various ways, and they're all looking into the cars of people, you know, and they know it's fairly, they know that, I mean, they know how other people are living. So that is another example of vulgarity. So though I feel that a bit of vulgarity is also good, because जब हम बोलते हैं कि okay, aspirations of the poor, you know, but aspirations is a good word for vulgarity only, because it gives them an idea that okay, we also can achieve this, that this is also possible. That is the promise of India, you know, hope that you do some things, you also can have a good life. That is why all the people put their kids in school and even through college degrees, thinking that if process, India says that this is the process, you do this and at the end of it, हो जाएगा, you know.
गरीब पैदा हुए तुम्हारी गलती नहीं, गरीब मरे तो तुम्हारी गलती है.
Yeah, they feel that, you know. So that is another thing that we also tell them. अभी पैदा हुए में भी एक doubt है, because there are people who try to tell the poor that karma, past life you did something bad, that's why you are poor.
बहुत सारे religious
So वो भी
preachers
होता
ये
है.
भी करते हैं.
So they also say that. So one thing we manage to do with the poor is, one thing which is keeping us safe is that the poor blame themselves, their own bad luck. Actually, more than other things, the state of being poor is a state of feeling that your luck is bad, and that whatever you do, you will be a bit unlucky, and they blame themselves a bit. And when all this is going on, we live very well, and they really feel that we are a different sort of people. And also, you know, in many ways, we chiefly, मेरा issue है कि we don't treat people very well just because they are very unlucky or very poor. But what is more surprising is I have seen poor people treat poor worse than us. The way we treat the poor is bad enough, but the way one poor person would treat another poor person when there is some kind of an issue, if someone needs something, is even worse. So it looks like we are a whole society which is a bit brutal. You know, हम एक brutal जैसा एक society है, because I feel that there has to be a humanitarian movement. जैसा केरला में हुआ था, all over India में one non-political, I don't know who, you know, maybe someone who speaks Hindi beautifully, you know, whatever, किसी ने train नहीं किया है हमारा society में how to deal with an unlucky person. अगर आप एक maid हो और आप hospital, government hospital जाते हैं, कितने बुरे तरह बर्ताव करते हैं. बर्ताव is a word, right? It's also in Malayalam. They treat them so badly. And this is at the nurse level, you know, junior doctor level, or even a guard level. So I feel that a kind of extra political movement is required in our country if we are interested in peace, to make our society less brutal, you know, and that I feel that we don't learn this in school or even in college, that you need to treat people with respect no matter what they are. अभी कुछ हो रहा है, because I've seen some viral videos. मुझे बहुत खुशी होता है कि एक पुलिस ऑफिसर ने थू बोला किसी को, and that guy, वो सब लोग अभी वायरल रील बनाते हैं So he is questioning the police officer, how can you call me tu? You know, and police officer अभी बोल रहा है okay तुम भी बोलो मुझे तो okay हो जाएगा. He said no, but that guy is not happy. तुमने आपने मुझे तू बोला. So a lot of those things are happening in India, but I feel that seriously we need to be trained to behave better, with people.
आप चौथा चैप्टर है मेरे ख्याल से. हाँ, हाउ इंडियाज केओस एंड अगलीनेस रीअश्योर द पुअर. सरप्राइज इज अवर नेशनल इमोशन, सरप्राइज एट द मोस्ट लॉजिकल आउटकम ऑफ आवर एक्शंस. और आगे आप लिखते हैं इंडिया इज मेनी टाइम्स मोर सीरियस अबाउट सोशल ऑर्डर देन पब्लिक ऑर्डर. और उसके बाद फ्रीडम और लिबर्टी का जो फर्क है, थोड़ा मैं चाहता हूँ आप मेरे दर्शकों को सर ये चीजें बताएं इस चैप्टर की जो है.
मेरा स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट इमोशन एज एन इंडियन, मेरा as in a public space, मैं बहुत काम हूँ. मैं जब मैं घर में हूँ मैं बहुत काम हूँ. But when I step out onto the Indian street, what I don't understand is अभी किसी ने हमको बोला कि लेफ्ट में चलो. मैंने कुछ डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कुछ नहीं देखा है, बट एवरीबडी टेल्स मी दैट वी ड्राइव ऑन द लेफ्ट. But have you noticed the wrong side driving? Just when you thought Indian road can't be any more messy, wrong side driving has increased. The traffic cop only, he thinks it's human nature now. It's okay, there is enough space. One thing which has always bothered me about India, which I always notice, not bothered exactly, is that we don't follow any rules on the roads. And but at the same time we are surprised. If you see that guy who's riding like a fool when he crashes, I always notice that he's baffled. He is very surprised. And I was like, what surprises you?
This happens, वो wrong side से आ रहा है, तेज आ रहा है और आपने हॉर्न दिया तो आपको गुस्से से देखेगा.
वो गुस्से से देगा. वो बोलेगा, मुझे पंजाबी में कुछ बोलेगा वो, because I am not moving, But at the same time, I feel that all this also saves us. In a country like India, India is an extension of everybody's bad luck. If you're a poor person living in your ghetto, or living in a slum, India's public space does not exclude you. But if you compare it, we cannot never underestimate what it is to be a poor person in London or Paris. It looks beautiful. But when you don't have any money in Europe or London, you feel like a real loser there because it is so beautiful. Public spaces are beautiful. The railway station is so beautiful. It's like the country is saying, we are great. And there's something wrong with you if you can't also be as great as us. That is the message of a rich country to a person who is not very lucky, or to a person who is poor. While an Indian public space is very reassuring, that it still belongs. Indian public space comforts every Indian that the country is not very high above you. The country has not left you behind, So that is why I feel that we really don't have a will to change it. Someone was telling me, Gurgaon में एक golf course road बन रहा था, international class में. All international cities in the suburbs, they have a main road जो grand होगा. Indian bureaucrats themselves, they don't want it. They say ये थोड़ा बहुत posh है, too posh. But psychologically, subconscious level में, the Indian government and the Indian people, they feel that let everything be a slightly messy in the public. It's okay. That's like a safety valve for the society. You feel a bit free. We're becoming very conservative in the social order. Social order बहुत strict हो रहा है. तो पब्लिक ऑर्डर में थोड़ा इधर उधर आई थिंक वी फील इट्स ओके.
इंडियंस को इंक्लूडिंग अस हमें हमेशा बताया गया कि गांव से निकलना है, छोटे कस्बे से बाहर निकलना है तो पढ़ाई, वो हमारी सारी मिजरीज का एक ही सॉल्यूशन है, पढ़ाई. पर उस पढ़ाई के अपने बहुत मसले हैं, क्योंकि वो एक नए किस्म का सोशल ऑर्डर बिल्ड करता है. आपने बहुत डिटेल्स में बात की है. प्लीज टेल अस अबाउट इट.
Yes, I feel that school education is great. I feel that everybody should go through the school education. But after that, now a higher education is how the upper class controls the society, and how India is also saying, you do this, okay, your life is set. You go to the college, and then the people go to the college, and life is not set. There are no jobs, but that hope that if you go to college and do engineering, medicine, or commerce, or whatever, now everybody has figured out that arts degree is useless, but that is a recent development. But they feel that something good will come out of the higher education. See, in this, अगर आपको कॉलेज जाना है और पढ़ना है तो दैट्स ग्रेट, दैट्स फैंटास्टिक. अगर आपको सिर्फ डिग्री के लिए कॉलेज जाते हैं तो इंडिया इज सेइंग दैट करो, कुछ हो जाएगा. बट दैट इज अ होप विच मेक्स पीपल फील दैट ओके, कुछ प्रोसेस है, हम प्रोसेस को फॉलो किया तो हम बच जाएंगे. दैट इज वन ऑफ द टेक्निक्स through which the rich try to control the poor, that there is a way, and occasionally some people इधर उधर हो जाता है, उनको IAS में भर्ती हो जाता है.
कन्हैया कुमार और नरेंद्र मोदी का बड़ा अच्छा एग्जांपल भी दिया है.
करेक्ट, हो जाता है, और we use that as an example. See, देखो, इनका तो हो गया, okay, so you also go to the college and you do those things and you'll be fine. So hope is a very good, a very powerful tool as society uses to control people or to keep people calm. Agar we know when हमारा Indian nuclear, but 10 years ago, I wanted to find out, okay, who's this Indian nuclear scientist? Because all the right-wing guys are like all into nuclear, oh, India nuclear, we are so strong. I thought, okay, who is the Indian nuclear scientist? But बहुत sexy दिखता है, like nuclear scientist. It is none of the city guys. None of those guys.
IIT pass outs.
No, none of these are IITians. No Bits Pilani. Indian nuclear science is run by the Indian small town and villagers. Who are the guys who need these opportunities? They come in thousands and thousands of people who apply. And of course, हमारा देश में सब में in everything there is this ratio. 10,000 people apply, there are some 10 seats or 50 seats. So in fact, I went there and I met a lot of people, and from where they are, the background. These things are all examples of great hope that people in the villages and small towns have, that if they join this stream of education, they will be saved.
आप एक जगह बहुत अच्छी सलाह देते हैं, और आप लिखते हैं कि ये एक सलाह है फॉर्मर पुअर स्टूडेंट से न्यू मॉडर्न पुअर स्टूडेंट को, और उसमें आप एक एक करके तमाम पॉलिटिशियंस की धज्जियां भी उड़ाते हैं और तमाम इंस्टीट्यूशंस की. You're talking about Kanhaiya Kumar here. He first graduated in geography and devoted his 20s to a doctoral trope in JNU, the refuge of art students who want to escape adult life. What Nehruvians call the aspirations of the poor are in reality co-option by the rich. फिर आगे आप लिखते हैं people underestimate how powerful it is to be what the world does not think you are. और एक आगे और दिलचस्प टिप्पणी है जिसमें आप नरेंद्र मोदी और कन्हैया कुमार की तुलना करते हैं. जरा बताइए कैसे है ये?
देखिए, there are some luxury products like bag, Mercedes, and people don't realize that the best luxury products वो इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रोडक्ट्स होता है, जो लोग बैठते हैं और सोचते हैं दुनिया के बारे में, वो अपर क्लास ने वो इंटेलेक्चुअलिटी को बनाया है और उसको फॉर्मलाइज किया है कि कॉलेज एजुकेशन जैसा, एंड नाउ अ लॉट ऑफ पुअर पीपल एंड लोअर मिडिल क्लास पीपल वो सोचते हैं कि ओके वो भी कुछ ऐसे करे, बट दे डोंट रियलाइज दैट दैट्स अ लग्जरी प्रोडक्ट. जस्ट लाइक माई नॉवल लिखता हूँ, ओके, अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल then try to write a novel and then they realize that it's like a lottery, art is something that works best when you're not expecting money from it or a life from it. Okay, ho gaya to acha hai, so there is a I'm not saying they are meaningless. Culture is great, but culture is not money, and what poor people and low middle class they move towards is some kind of a better life which they are never going to get, so that's what. But Kanhaiya Kumar was lucky. Now I'm saying someone as smart as Kanhaiya Kumar, like what was he doing? Okay, geography. First of all, I know which kid was like, I really want to study geography, I'm completely in love with geography, and I want to do something in geography. I don't know what they even study, but anyway, that happens. And uske baad there are hundreds and thousands of people who keep on studying so that they don't have to enter the real world. I understand, it is kind of daunting. Kanhaiya Kumar was lucky because, he entered politics and he could save himself. And also Narendra Modi also was lucky because the fact that there is Narendra Modi and Kanhaiya Kumar only shows that there were thousands of people like them who, if they don't make it in politics, they're nothing. They could be nothing. Generally, I'm just telling people that don't go for the lottery. Always grapple with the real world. Real world में कुछ हो जाता है, If you're going to escape from real world, I'm saying that if you're interested in art and films, okay, start working with a film company. Initially they'll all exploit you. Everybody will exploit you, but at least it is something. Rather than trying to escape real world
and mugging those facts which are not going to be of much of use, क्योंकि कॉलेज ठीक नहीं है, टीचर्स नहीं है, फ्यूचर नहीं है.
And also esoteric, I'm saying, जब आपके पास $10 million है, तो आप एक जगह में बैठ के सोच सकते हैं, ओके, द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ कॉलोनाइजेशन ऑन साउथ अफ्रीका. उसका मतलब क्या है, क्या है, So you can, I'm saying that when you are very affluent or you're interested, if you're really interested, that's a different issue. But I'm saying that your mother is selling her gold or pawning her gold to send you to college. और तुम कॉलेज जाके you're going इधर बैठ के you're going to say, okay, impact of colonization on South Africa has no meaning. जब आप, if you don't belong to a certain economic class, there is a lot of intellectual pursuit which has no meaning unless you are very interested in the subject. I'm always saying, boss, if you're interested in South Africa, then that's great,
Then you can devote your whole life.
You can do it, but that is great. You're lucky. But otherwise, if you're doing it for degree or you don't know what you're doing or you want prestige or you're ashamed, okay, you're saying you want to tell someone that you did post-graduation or PhD, I am saying that is what the society has to change. And I feel that sometimes India is beginning to change that. India has to change the perception that that higher education is something. Higher education is only a club. Higher education in India only means that your parents paid the fees. It is no big deal, In fact, that's why successful Indian politicians themselves are fabricating post-graduation degree or graduation degree while having achieved a lot in their lives. So that is the stigma Indian society creates around a meaningless degree. So why should it be that? I'm on the side of politicians who fabricate the degree. Because it is not, if the stigma, if the society is creating this kind of a stigma, then obviously people will fabricate degrees even after they've been very successful.
द डार्क फोर्स दैट गार्ड्स अस। और उसमें आप जिक्र करते हैं इसी किताब का कि इसका आपने एक वर्जन वाई पुअर पीपल डोंट किल अस सैफ अली खान को पढ़ने के लिए भेजा और कुछ ही हफ्तों बाद उनके ऊपर हमला हो गया।
Yeah, yeah.
व्हाट हैपेंड टू दैट फिल्म?
It's completely different now. Yeah, I'm working on it. This is a film which I've written. वो feature film version of this book है जिसमें एक आदमी he gets obsessed with the idea that anytime there's going to be a revolution, and he goes crazy because of that. But he's seeing the signs everywhere that kuch hone wala hai, and he goes mad. So now we've taken a completely different arty independent route. So I hope that works out, and I hope your audience will get to see that film very soon. It'll be a comedy. It'll be a dark comedy. But here, this dark force, this is like one of the reasons. One of the reasons we are safe is that the Indian police is so brutal. Officially and unofficially. Earlier it was unofficial. Now if I'm seeing videos posted from the official handle of the police.
कि हाथ पैर तोड़ दिए,
So
ये कर दिया,
so
बाल मुड़ा
that's
दिए,
yeah,
हाँ।
so that is very clear. And but it is one of the things that
कैसे देखते हैं इंडियंस जस्टिस को, कैसे देखते हैं?
Indians justice को ऐसे ही देखते हैं कि this is good. Most Indians will feel that police have to break the legs of the criminals. And
ठीक मारा।
हाँ ठीक, वो क्या process है, judicial process तो वो लंबा होगा. There is no meaning. And even the underworld, the way the encounter cops, जो उनको encounter बोलता है, which is the most misused English word, the underworld को खत्म किया बॉम्बे में. Generally the middle class was for it. Okay, shoot, occasionally some innocent man whom the police didn't like, the police force themselves were like gangsters. It was basically a gang war. One wore uniform, the other didn't wear uniform. But they say that's okay. As long as if some innocent people die, I think most Indians will say, okay, that's bad, that's sad, but this is better than the official process where you go to court and that guy will get a bail, and then there is no end to it. But in fact, that is how the whole world is going. So I feel that वो जो Western, so-called Western values थे कि human rights, or no matter what, one innocent person should not suffer. It's okay if 100 guilty people get away. One innocent guy, he should not suffer. Those values, see, that's what I mean by training. वो trained value था. जो भी वो intellectuals थे एक time का, उन्होंने सब, they all said the same thing, and it's a great ideal. I believe in that ideal, but उसका time अभी even America में खत्म हो गया. So which is the most interesting thing which is happening in the world? There is a global middle class value which is surfacing, which is very different from Western values. The West is shrinking. तो वो जो human rights, वो police station में human rights होना चाहिए, even for the poor. I don't think anybody seriously believes that, as long as we are safe, and we are safe. India is one of the safest countries among the middle income countries, especially in the cities. If you go to South Africa, which has got a similar economics, you will get mugged. If there are streets on Johannesburg where if you're carrying a cell phone, there's a very good chance that you'll lose your phone. You will get mugged. But those kind of things don't happen in Indian cities because we are brutal. So it is a kind of it's one of those things which is unfortunate, but it protects us.
आप मिसयूज की बात कर रहे थे, एक जगह आपने नोबेल लॉरेट के हवाले से आईक्यू टेस्ट को लेकर भी ऐसी बात बताई, प्लीज टेल अस कि वो ओरिजिनली किस चीज के लिए बना था.
हाँ, वो एजुकेशन में आता है. आई मीन मोस्ट ऑफ आवर एंट्रेंस एग्जाम्स आर एक्चुअली एन इमिटेशन ऑफ आईक्यू टेस्ट. मगर आईक्यू टेस्ट जब when IQ tests were conceived, it was meant to test retardation. It was meant to test if someone is mentally going to be okay. As in, let's give an example of okay. You get 40 out of 100. That is supposed to be a test that's okay, boss. You can be a normal person in society. That you got 90 out of 100 has no meaning. It is just supposed to ensure, it's supposed to be a measure of whether you are a normal person. But then IQ tests, people started using IQ tests as a measure of intelligence, which is ironic because that is the most unintelligent thing people have ever done. And all this aptitude tests that we have is an imitation of that. So most of the time there's all these tests that people are sitting and writing. They're all coming from the idea of aptitude tests, and that is why I'm not surprised that you can meet some of the dumbest people in IIT.
इसमें मेरा फेवरेट है द डिफीट ऑफ द एमेचर इंडियन, और उसमें भी जो आपने एक डेढ़ पन्ने का लिखा है, मैं थोड़ा सा बता दूं अपने व्यूअर्स को.
Please.
Sarcasm and insight at its best. The homeless amateur Indian. To ruin the chances of sleeping with them, rasp is the science of climate change beyond dispute. They say things like asparagus and edamame and eat them too. They used to love Aung San Suu Kyi, but not anymore. They read very long articles in English that are called long form. They despise the word infrastructure when uttered by a provincial man. But anything they hate, they will consider forgiving if it is sustainable. They know what an open relationship means. Many of them, especially in Mumbai, have friends among street urchins. They hated giving their biometrics to their government, but routinely do that for an American or European visa. They wish for diversity in plants and animals, even though they themselves are a monoculture of identical ethical organisms spread across the informed world, whose president was Barack Obama. At times, they hold candles and go somewhere. They were for long awkward in India, but they had their islands where they could escape the nation. Now there is nowhere to hide, not even in literature festivals. This is a government that is everywhere, so they feel uncertain in universities, think tanks, cultural bodies, journalism, theatre, art and mainstream cinema, activism and in charitable works. They have lost beef too. You are brutal in your writing. Please tell us about these amateur Indians and the dichotomy.
So that's a very interesting phenomenon which has happened in the last 10-15 years. अभी जो एक किस्म का Indians थे जो very westernized थे, in every way. Of course, they'll eat samosas. Food was the only place where they were Indian, because maybe samosa is hard to resist. But otherwise, mentally, these are the people I would call them. They were the Nehruvians. That they had some ideals which are not from this country, which seemed like a set of good things, but they were completely imported. And they always kind of struggled in India. And then now, the big difference that has happened is that, but even, I mean, the 20-25 years ago, the kind of people who would run the country, the judges, even the politicians, film actors, they were all amateur Indians. They had very westernized views. But now, a new kind of Indian has taken over, Like, for example, you think Ratan Tata and India's poor person, there's no connection. When you look at it, he's of a different class. Whatever later on he did some things, but he's from a different way of thinking. But now, if you look at Mukesh Ambani and an average Indian, there is a lot of cultural similarity between them. They worship the same gods, they have the same rituals, they have the same sensibilities. So there is a cultural sameness that has happened between the ruling class and the average Indian, because the amateur Indian has been completely eliminated.
एक अगले चैप्टर में आप एक दिलचस्प टिप्पणी को विस्तार करते हैं कि इंटरनेट के एरा में पेट्रियोटिज्म को कैसे एक सीक्रेट ड्यूटी में तब्दील कर दिया गया और कैसे पूरा पैराडाइम शिफ्ट हो रहा है, बताइए जरा।
Yeah. So there was a time जो भी अमीर लोग सोचते थे वो गरीब नहीं सोचते ऐसे। इनफैक्ट वो साइन था कि ओके, ये अपर क्लास लोग का ये एटीट्यूड है तो गरीब लोग ऑन पर्पस दे विल डू द ऑपोजिट थिंग, बिकॉज वो एक साइन था कि वो दे शुड नॉट मैच इट नाउ। बट व्हाट द अपर क्लास हैज डन वेरी वेल in the last 20-25 years is they have made patriotism on par with religion. That has been a great strategic move, consciously and also unconsciously. Otherwise, see, जब I grew up in Madras, I still call it Madras. When I grew up in Chennai, उस time मुझे एक भी पेट्रियट, आई डिडंट नो इवन वन पेट्रियट, ऑनेस्टली ऑल पेट्रियट्स वर डेड। वो सिपिया पेंटिंग में वो पोर्ट्रेट में थे, वो सब पेट्रियट्स है। पेट्रियट मीन्स समवन हु इज डेड। वरना उस टाइम भी जो जोक मारते थे हम, एक वन जर्मन, वन ब्रिट एंड इंडियन वेंट टू अ बार, the most foolish guy will be an Indian only and we'll all laugh unless there was a Pakistani. Then the Indian will be smarter than the Pakistani. Otherwise, we always made fun of ourselves. और वो फ्रीडम मूवमेंट में जब मैं प्ले में एक्ट करता था, हम लोग सोचते लाइक व्हाई व्हेन द ब्रिटिश आर हिटिंग अस, व्हाई आर वी स्टैंडिंग विद अ फ्लैग एंड वी शुड रन अवे। वी वेरी प्रैक्टिकल people. We didn't hate the nation, we loved the nation only, but we didn't have to show it. See, those days you loved something and you didn't show it. It was as simple as that, and you didn't talk too much about it. First time I met patriotism, first time I saw patriotism was when the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees came to Chennai. That guy would sit and talk about his nation, my God, for 1 or 2 hours. That's when I realized that you can love so much. And you can love something which is not a girl so much that, that he would, they had so much passion. That's when I started first noticing that it's a serious emotion. It is not one of those bullshit that historians talk about. But now, patriotism has become a kind of you can't, when Bombay was facing serious fiscal problems, what the Shiv Sena did, instead of course, as they always do, instead of doing something good, they started playing national anthem in the theatres. One of those patriotic moves. And when they started, I would be one of those guys who would be sitting. Only because when you're forcing me to do something I don't want to, because you don't know how to run a city and I have to stand for the national anthem. Of course, I had all the historical facts. I would ask, and then not many people will bother me, but there'll be this one guy who will poke you and say, okay, stand for the national anthem. So I would ask him, which language is national anthem written? Most people didn't know. Okay, this was before Google and all. He'd say Hindi, I'll say no. Of course not, it's not in Hindi. He'd say Sanskrit, of course it's not in Sanskrit. Now I'm not going to do anything. Boss, you play national anthem, I'll stand. It's a completely different society. Right, you don't, it is, even then it is not that I sat to the national anthem to disrespect, but it was to make a political statement. But now I'm okay, I don't want to make any political statement. So that has been a big transformation.
Why the poor love politicians? तो एक तो अच्छी चीज़ मुझे ये लगी बुक के स्ट्रक्चर में कि सेकंड चैप्टर में आप सारे जो आगे आपने एक्सपेंड किए थेरीज उनको टच बेस करते हैं, देन वन बाय वन यू टॉक अबाउट देम. Politicking has a sense of direction and gravitas because of its objective, which is to transform society. But politicians spend very little time on the transformation part. फिर आप आगे एक एग्जाम्पल भी देते हैं कि IIT चेन्नई के लड़कों ने
Yeah.
तय किया कि हम इलेक्शन लड़ेंगे, और बड़े खूबसूरत से मोटिव ह्यूमैनिटीज के प्रोफेसर के लिखे हुए,
Yeah.
और करुणानिधि आए, उन्होंने कहा भैया सबको टीवी दो, टीवी बांटो,
Correct.
and he won the election.
Correct.
क्या ये कनेक्शन है स्टेटस को का और पॉलिटिशियंस का? आपने क्योंकि एक जगह लिखा भी है कि दिस इज पुअर पीपल्स रिवेंज एज वेल,
Yes. Yes.
प्लीज एक्सप्लेन.
Indian politics जो है, वो is the revenge of the poor. How are the poor attacking us? वो अटैक करने का जरूरत नहीं है. वो they just elect the politicians. It's not that they particularly emotionally love the politicians, but they like their politicians. मैं एक चीज बताता हूँ. जब क्रिकेट वर्ल्ड कप हुआ था साउथ अफ्रीका और जिम्बाब्वे में, मैं आउटलुक मैगजीन के लिए वो कवर करने के लिए गया था. और जिम्बाब्वे में I stayed in the house of a white couple. Those days, those are the farmers. All the rich people were white, and they had this house, and they had like हमारा इधर होता है. They had servants. They had 2 black girls as a servant. And उस time Robert Mugabe का बहुत बात चलता था, because Robert Mugabe wanted to drive all the white people out. So I was very young. So they were telling me about how everybody hates Mugabe, even blacks hate Mugabe. मुझे अफ्रीकन पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में कुछ पता नहीं था, इंडियन पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में भी कुछ नहीं पता था उस टाइम. मगर मैंने बोला आई डोंट बिलीव blacks hate Mugabe. They said, why? Because you hate Mugabe, that should be one reason why they don't hate. Because that is what my third world brain was telling me. She was completely shocked. It's like, what nonsense, I said, why don't you ask? So she called the black maids and she said, okay, because she said, how can they be on the side of Mugabe? Mugabe is driving on people like us, but we are taking such good care of our servants. We pay them very well. We take good, which is all very true. But that is not how politics works. So she asked them, first they giggled and all that kind of stuff, but then they said that no, they like Mugabe. So she was very hurt, right? But I knew this, okay, because that's exactly the relationship between politicians and the poor. In a society, the poor, given a choice between the rich and the politician, will always like the politician more. For cultural reasons, but also now the Indian politics, they just provide to the poor. There was a time Chennai में आप वो साइकिल के वो फ्रंट बार में बैठ नहीं सकते थे. वो इट वाज अगेंस्ट द लॉ. व्हेन यू आर साइकिलिंग द डबल्स यू हैव टू सिट बिहाइंड, साइकिल बार में नहीं. सो द ट्रैफिक कॉप विल स्टॉप द साइकिलिस्ट, take the air out and take 5 rupees from you, okay, or threaten you to take 5. That is the battle between the poor and the poor. The worst enemies of the poor was people who are slightly richer than the traffic cop. What did MGR do? MGR ने एक दिन बोला, he legalized it. You can sit on the
साइकिल के डंडे पे बैठ के जा सकते हो आगे.
And people started celebrating because the standard of the poor was so low from politicians that even this was good. Now you can't make them happy with this. Now you have to give them gold and computers and money to keep them satisfied, and that is what the politicians have done in order to win elections. They've created some peace in the society by bribing the poor. Every time there is election, there's a lot of money for the poor, not just booze and other things, right? So, and not only that, it's not just that, it's also the hospitals, and for people who are dependent on the government, we don't realize how much it matters to them. Of course, the life is still hard and things could be better, but there's a lot of public service that politicians initiate because they need the votes.
इंटरेस्टिंग. आपने आधार का एग्जाम्पल देके एक बात समझाई, वो बताइए, फिर देन वील कम टू द लास्ट पार्ट्स.
See, when मेरा सोसाइटी में जो भी वो इंटेलेक्चुअल्स है, द टाइम दे इरिटेटेड मी द मोस्ट was उनका कुछ फंडास होता है, कुछ थियरीज होता है, लाइक प्राइवेसी, and they keep talking about history, but they don't know the history most of the time, okay? So when India wanted to introduce, now it might look ridiculous, but 10, 15 years ago when India wanted to introduce a biometric identity for most Indians, there was a lot of objection on basis of privacy. Now, first of all, privacy is an invention in America because of a war between America's rich and the gossip media. That is how they created the notion of privacy. That is the history from where the idea of privacy comes. But anyway, so there was this paranoia that you can't give your biometric to the government, which irritated me particularly because if you look at the form that you have to fill for an American visa, they ask for everything and these guys give it. Okay, and I'm saying that if they ask for a kidney also, they'll give it. But they had a problem with giving the biometrics to the Indian government. And of course, if you tell them, they'll say, no, it's a matter of choice.
Yeah.
It is a matter of choice whether I want the American visa. Boss, you have never said no to American visa just because of that form that you have to fill. You always knew that if you want a visa, you have to do a certain thing. That is the nature of the state. Others, we all have the choice to be Naga sadhus. Nobody is stopping us. You can be we can go and live in the forest. But anyway, the other was a very moral force. It might come from the Indian government, but it was a great idea which they came in the way, but the politicians, and of course Nandan Nilekani's brainchild, they ensured through the power of will, okay, and the fact that most Indians were actually practical, they saw it through, and the society is better for that. So people who would have struggled to establish their identity, now don't have to struggle so much.
गुड़गांव का बड़ा दिलचस्प एग्जाम्पल है, उस एग्जाम्पल के बारे में बताइए। और एक जगह आपने लिखा है लेटर चैप्टर्स में, व्हाई वी शुड टिप मोर।
या सो गुड़गांव में मैं गुड़गांव में रहता हूँ, सो देयर इज लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट आई एम डिस्कसिंग, सो एनीथिंग इन पर्टिकुलर दैट यू हैव, बट आई विल टॉक अबाउट द टिपिंग,
द डिवीजन, द रिच विलेजर, द पुअर विलेजर एंड द टाइमिंग पार्ट।
या गुड़गांव में
मतलब वो अपने आप में गुड़गांव इतनी कमाल की एंथ्रोपोलॉजिकल, सोशियोलॉजिकल, पॉलिटिकल स्टडी है ना, केओस भी है, बहुत पॉश जगह भी है। नोएडा में एक मिडिल क्लास वाली एक सस्टेनेबिलिटी है, लोअर क्लास एंड मिडिल क्लास। बहुत लिमिटेड पॉकेट्स हैं जहां नोएडा में कोई सब मल्टी मिलियनर्स रह रहे हैं, अल्ट्रा रिच रह रहे हैं। गुड़गांव में वो दिखता है, और इसीलिए जब गुड़गांव में पानी भरता है तो नोएडा वालों के चेहरे पे एक स्मर्क आता है, एज इफ सम, क्योंकि सब एक दूसरे की मिजरी में जस्टिस खोज रहे हैं।
हाँ, ऐसा हम उतना नहीं सोचते नोएडा के बारे में, बट
see you said
no just see 20 years ago जब मैं बॉम्बे में रहता था, तब when I visited गुड़गांव, it was for a story for Times of India। क्या हो रहा था कि वो सडनली लैंड का वैल्यू बढ़ रहा था गुड़गांव में, पूरा गांव था, और then what is happening was suddenly I called them the sudden millionaires, because वो सब फार्मर था, बट सडनली वो अमीर हो गया, एंड जो भी वो गरीब थे उनको ज्यादा पैसा मिला, बिकॉज जो भी अमीर थे उन्होंने सस्ते में लैंड बेच दिया था अ बिट अर्ली। 30 years ago उन्होंने सोचा ओके बेच दिया, बट लैंड वैल्यू स्टार्टेड इट इंक्रीज बाय 20 times 3 or 4 years में, और जो भी गरीब थे, कंसिडर्ड गरीब बिकॉज दे वर नॉट लिक्विड, दे हैड लैंड, they suddenly became very rich people of Gurgaon, but they still look like farmers and villagers. In fact, once in one of those middle class colonies, one woman came to meet a woman, and this woman thought that the other woman is a maid. Okay, she wants to be a maid. She said, no, come nahi. And then, but that woman wanted to buy this woman's house. She was a farmer, and she was there to check out the rate of the house, because that is how the society was changing. And all those, and then those guys suddenly they were millionaires, but they didn't know what to do, so they became drivers for the new sahibs, and they had more money than the sahibs, but they were working for some time as drivers, and of course that was a very short phenomenon, because eventually they didn't want to work. They started buying cars and they started renting them out, and they started doing other work, or they became land brokers. So all this was happening, and that is one of the things I'm arguing in the book has kept the peace, because वो land का value इतना बढ़ गया है, all across India. Even if people are not always selling, they just know that they are sitting on a lot of money. That itself gives you a sense of dignity, right? मगर पहले both the initially when the Sahib started living in Gurgaon, they would shout at some tractor guy. Then the tractor guy will come with 4 friends and beat you up, because they are farmers. They have sold land, but they still feel that they belong in this place, and they didn't like the new Sahibs and the way they would shout at you just because you came on the wrong side of the road or something like that. So all those things were happening 15 years ago. Yeah.
And why should we tip more? चेन्नई में आपने twice बेचे.
Yeah, so when I was 17, 18, I had to work. मेरा भी एक situation था, domestic situation था, I had to do some work. And my experience as I used to carry a big bag, and I used to go door to door to sell the toys. And I was amazed at people. I thought that they would be rude, or maybe some of them were, but most people were just kind and nice, that I changed my opinion of the society. And even now, maybe because of that experience, I always feel that Indians don't tip enough. Like tipping is one of the examples I'm giving, to just help someone who's just not lucky. That's all. Okay, fine. Everybody knows that you're ordering something for 4,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees. That guy who's delivering knows, your maid knows. I feel that we have to be a bit generous, where you also tip a bit, instead of picking up a fight to get a discount in a restaurant. I feel that we should be a bit generous. Whoever is coming, home delivery wala, jo bhi hai, I feel that we should tip more instead of being stingy. And tip, and don't tell anyone also. You don't have to post it on social media. So we just have to do these things quietly.
Last chapter, inequality cannot be solved.
Yeah. So there is a lot of I feel that what is happening in this world chiefly is a war between millionaires and billionaires. That is the actual war. And the millionaires make it look like we should always fight what they are fighting for. Their problem,
And in their leadership.
Their problem is with the billionaires. There's a billionaire issue and millionaire issue. And the entire world is talking about inequality and equality. That is a bit of a distraction created by millionaires, because their problem is with the billionaires. If you look at all the issues that are discussed when people talk about inequality, they talk about billionaires. They talk about how much money the billionaires have. When Arundhati Roy writes an essay, I found that essay very funny. When she stands, imagine she's standing in front of Mukesh Ambani's building, and so 25 floors of luxury. But Arundhati Roy lives in Jorbagh. So 25 crore is not inequality, 1 billion is inequality. This whole issue is nonsense. In fact, I am arguing that billionaires don't contribute to inequality as much as millionaires do, because take this, lower middle class, all entrance exam likhte hai, college. Millionaires ke kids bhi likhte hai. Okay, they have so much advantage, social advantage. They are in competition with all the middle class, most of the things the middle class does. Cricket team mein, athletics mein, intellectual pursuits mein, IIT mein, billionaires, they don't write all these entrance exams. So they are not as important in the issue of inequality as much as the millionaires are. So I feel that inequality anyway cannot be solved because that is the nature of human society. I feel that what we need to focus on is social justice. How people should be commuting in comfort. Everybody should have a basic size of the house. Those are the things that are more important than this theoretical idea of inequality, which is a problem which bothers only millionaires. I feel that that is a distraction from the real issue, which is social justice.
मनु एक सवाल, चूंकि आपने कई जगह अपने जर्नलिस्टिक एक्सपीरियंसेस के बारे में लिखा है, किताब में वैसे जिक्र नहीं है, पर आई वांट टू टॉक अबाउट नीरा राडिया टेप्स.
Oh, okay.
You wrote that story
Yes, for Open Magazine. Yes.
for Open Magazine.
Yes.
Please tell us about it, क्योंकि if I remember correctly, सुप्रीम कोर्ट में CBI ने 22 या 23 में ये बात कही कि हमें कुछ भी उसमें ऐसा आपत्तिजनक नहीं मिला.
Yeah.
क्या था वो पूरा मामला? उसने मतलब किस तरह की चीजों को सामने रखा फ्रंट पे, थोड़ा सा अगर
Yeah.
आप बता सकें.
तो अराउंड 2010, अर्ली 2010 में मुझे एक टेप मिला. ओके, मैं बता नहीं सकता हूँ कौन था, मगर उनको भी डायरेक्टली नहीं मिला था. एक टेप उस वक्त हमने सोचा कि फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री का टेप था शायद. उस टेप में there was a recording of many conversations that a lobbyist called Neera Radia, the conversations that she was having with various public figures, including a cabinet minister and a few other people, and of course columnists and journalists. तो मुझे ये लगा कि Indians are so used to political corruption, they won't be so interested. I mean, what she was trying to do clearly, she was trying to get someone appointed as telecom minister. That was her larger objective. And her clients were both Mukesh Ambani and Ratan Tata were her clients. And there is also a recording of her conversation with Ratan Tata also.
Yes.
So when I thought, this is what is interesting, because political corruption, Indians are bored. I mean, you can tell them the most interesting thing they want, but people have not seen how media is used by lobbyists. So there was a conversation with Barka Dutt and also Veer Sanghvi. And so we ran very few tapes. And then at that time, I mean, it's not like, I mean, see, we have to be very practical. It is not like we were the BBC, we can do anything. I had to keep the covers, the fact that we were doing it a secret, even within Open. Only 4 or 5 of us knew. And we created a dummy cover. And I think India Today used to print us. Okay. We created a dummy cover internally. And the last minute we released the actual story, because we had to ensure that we made the cover look very boring, that it is one of those. But what the conversation showed was this lobbyist trying to influence journalists to do a set of things. So that is what the Neera Radia story is about. And another interesting thing which happened after that, the mainstream media kept quiet about it. And we kept provoking them because they thought that, okay, it's a small magazine. I mean, the story had gone viral for those days. I don't think the word viral even existed then. But the Indian mainstream media kept quiet about it. And we tried to provoke them. And then Barka Dutt of NDTV, she did something strange.
1 hour show.
She asked me to come to the studio. So I was very confused, like, what is, there is no defense. I mean, you did speak to Neera Radia and we already said everything, like, why didn't you, our question, I had already said in my column, all Barka Dutt has to do is explain why didn't you tell us all about Neera Radia's conversation with you, even before we released the tape. And her own conversation with Radia, there is nothing really fishy about the whole thing. It is just, but she was calling us to the studio when the entire Indian media was trying to suppress it. So I was like, I didn't know what, and I think tactically it was a big blunder on her part to call me for to the show. Though she was lucky, I didn't like, honestly, to be in front of the camera and all that, and I had no experience of being in front of the camera. So she was a bit lucky, because I believe that those days when journalists should be very dignified and just speak very little and all that kind of stuff. But even considering that, I feel that she brought a lot of attention to the story because of the show. But what was interesting was, after that, we had to protect the story. Ratan Tata went to court saying that we cannot carry any more tapes, but because we had more tapes, we had to just transcribe it. So we had to get legal representation, and that is one of the funniest thing that I ever did as an editor, because we went door to door to the top lawyers in Delhi, and everybody said no. Just 5 minutes before we would approach them, they would have got said that there's no way we can represent you against Ratan Tata. Sorry, so that was a very interesting episode in my journalistic life.
Interesting. Last question, sir. When will be the Hindi translation available? कब इसका हिंदी और दूसरी
Yeah,
भारतीय
I'm in
भाषा में
talks. In fact, I'm going to sign with Manjul Publishers. They are
अच्छा.
interested in the Hindi and Malayalam translations. So I hope.
हैरी पॉटर की किताबें नहीं छापी हैं.
Yeah,
Good,
that's
हाँ,
nice.
good publication.
Great.
Thank you. और that
Great.
note,
Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank
जी,
you.
ये मनु जोसेफ की किताब है Why the Poor Don't Kill Us, The Psychology of Indians. हम भारतीयों की, अलग अलग किस्म के भारतीयों की जो हिपोक्रेसीज हैं, जो अलग अलग किस्म की मनोदशाएं हैं, जिसमें हम होलियर देन दाऊ होते हैं, बाकी सब या तो विक्टिम होते हैं या उसको अंजाम देने वाले होते हैं अपराध को, बहुत अच्छे से छील के धर दिया है. ज़रूर पढ़िए. 599 रुपये सिर्फ इसकी कीमत है. बहुत ही शार्प स्टिंगी राइटिंग है. आई स्ट्रांगली रिकमेंड दिस बुक. किताब वाला में इतना ही. सिलसिला चलता रहेगा किताबों का, पढ़ते रहेंगे और आपसे भी पढ़ने को कहते रहेंगे. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.